Are we good? Everyone's getting in?
I have no idea, but I assume so.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. We're just gonna be giving folks on Zoom a couple more minutes to enter the webinar, but otherwise we'll be getting started super quickly. So to start with, we're just gonna go ahead and share some slides about some upcoming programming that we have going on, some opportunities that we have coming up the archive. And then after that, I will just be introducing Bethany and we'll be getting started. I'm Linotype and Monotype. I am the public programming coordinator over here at the archive. And we're also joined by Sarah Getz, who is the collections programming manager, and they are handling everything over Zoom. So huge thank you to Sarah for managing all of that for us. Hi, thank you so much for coming. Feel free to get comfortable. If anyone wants to leave your things in those cubbies, feel free to do that. You can also sit on those red cushions, wherever you're the most comfortable. All right, I think we can get started with the slides. Welcome, all of you. Welcome to the Salon series at Letterform Archive. For those of you who are joining us over Zoom, feel free to drop in the chat box where you're joining us from. We do have folks coming from all over, so thank you so much for making it out to this event. And at the end of the talk, we will be taking questions from folks who are here in person, as well as folks on Zoom. Feel free to use the Q&A function to put all of your questions in, or you could put them in the chat, however you feel comfortable. Please do note that the recording of the Salon will be available on the website event page for 1 week to the general public if you have registered for the event ahead of time. And then after that, it will be available only to members. And if you're interested in finding out more about Letterform Archive membership, feel free to go onto letterformarchive.org/join. Really? Okay. So this event that we have coming up on April 6th is the Salon Series 38, Design as Protester. And this will be a strictly online lecture with the design organization called Design Display, featuring Mark Fox and Angie Wang, as well as Heather Snyder-Quinn and Adam Del Marcel. And our panelists have designed for organizations ranging from nonprofits to Fortune 500 companies, producing work that spans advertising to AI. Beyond their client projects, their personal and self-initiated work speaks to their existence as American citizens and human beings. How can designers integrate justice, equity, and human rights into a professional practice? Hear from creators featured in Strike Through, which is the exhibition on view right now, closing on April 16th. So we're just closing in a couple more weeks. Make sure to let people know to come and check out the show. And then the next event that we have coming up is Call and Response, Histories of Designing Protest, which is also an online lecture featuring Ana Llorente and Jose Menendez. Protesters through time have used typography to strike through a myriad forms of oppression. Charting the histories of this material is also an art form itself. The speakers in this panel will share their research and curatorial practices on the history of protest movements across North America and the Caribbean. A panel of design history experts enhance Letterform Archive's exhibition Strike Through, Typographic Messages of Protest. So these are the final 2 salons that we are going to have that are related to the exhibition. Then we have coming up Inventing the Alphabet, Origin Stories to Forensic Evidence, which is going to be an in-person lecture with Johanna Drucker. This vividly illustrated in-person talk explores the origin and development of the alphabet. Though this event is sold out, you can still register online to receive a recording of the lecture. So if you're interested in checking that out, feel free to sign up, even though you won't be able to make it for the in-person one. And then we have coming up Putting Pencil to Pixel, which is an online workshop with Angie Shea. Unlock the power of the iPad to create dynamic, polished, and punchy lettering. No previous Procreate or lettering experience is required. And Next, we have Introduction to Modern Type Design Workshop, which is an online workshop with Fair Cozy. Making type is fun. Learn how to create a typeface from sketch to screen and everything in between. In this 10-week online workshop, which will take place on Mondays from June 5th through August 14th, each participant will gain an understanding of the methodologies and processes used to produce digital typefaces today. And this is starting from June 13th. And then we have finally coming up Hidden Diversity, Lessons from 4 Centuries of Javanese Script Heritage, which is an online lecture with Aditya Bayu Perdana. And during this lecture, you will be taking a trip to Java, where 4 centuries of script, calligraphy, and typography leaves a treasure trove of inspiration for design. And this is happening Tuesday, June 20th online. So if you are interested in signing up for any of these workshops or lectures, please do visit our website at letterformarchive.org/events, and you should be able to sign up directly from there. And just to remind folks again, we will be starting off with this lecture with Bethany, and if anyone has questions, feel free to either put them into the chat box, into the Q&A function on Zoom, and in person, we'll have time for questions at the end. We have reserved about 30 minutes, 40 minutes for Q&A. So there will be plenty of time for that. Make sure to write your questions down so you remember them, and then we'll get to them towards the end. And finally, it is my pleasure to introduce Bethany Qualls.
Hi.
Bethany Qualls is a scholar, editor, and teacher based in San Francisco. She loves books and print culture so much, she now has a PhD in English literature from UC Davis. When not thinking about gossip and new media in the 18th century, she can be found editing for Broadview Press, teaching college writing, and trying to name the fonts used for movie credits. Her archival recovery work has been recognized as a Lewis Walpole Library Fellow, American Society of 18th Century Studies Women's Caucus, Catherine Macaulay Prize winner, and Mellon Public Scholar working with Letterform Archive in the summer of 2021, where she is a longtime volunteer. Over the past 2 decades, Bethany has written about everything from closet organization to Charlotte Lennox, Britney Spears, to translation best practices. Her recent publications include essays in the collection A Spy on Eliza Haywood, ABO, Interactive Journal for Women in the Arts, 1640 through 1830, 18th Century Fiction, and most recently, Gossip's Ephemeral Longevity, Power Circulation, and New Media in NECSUS, European Journal of Media Studies. Without any further ado, please welcome Bethany Qualls.
Hi. Thanks. Okay. And now we get to have the really fun part about Zoom wanting to be a pain, which is the best. We love Zoom. Zoom, why are you doing this to me? Because it wants to do this thing that I dislike a lot. Hey, Sarah.
Yes, what's happening?
It's doing that thing where it's showing the meeting controls again, even though I told it not to.
No.
Do you know how to make that not happen?
I think the way that you made it not happen, can you try it again
Sure.
before going to this window?
One moment, please. Okay, come on. Yeah, okay. And let's try this again. Then, yeah, there, and then we go here, and then we say, rid of that thing. This is very
It's still there on the big screen.
Sure is. Sure is.
Thanks.
Oh, exciting. Because now everyone can see the chat stuff and things. Sarah, do you want me to just share my screen? Oh, but then
So-
you can do the thing that you need to do.
So no one is seeing the extra meeting controls on Zoom.
That's cool. I like that.
But it is showing up on your end.
Mm-hmm.
Also, just FYI, Manage's camera turned sideways again.
Oh, no. Not again.
Sorry, y'all. Getting some technical stuff.
This was working. It was beautiful. It worked beautifully. And then it didn't. Okay. Okay, I have another idea. Thank you all for your patience as technology once again continues to make our lives so much easier and smooth and seamless. It's so great. Come on, come over here. That's great. Come on in. That's awesome. Welcome, welcome. I would like to move you here so that I can mess with you. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Okay, well. Yeah, sorry, guys. This is so exciting. Okay, so we're just gonna. Thanks. I took this photo. Well, yeah, I also take photos. I'm very, very talented. It's great. Yeah, I'm really good with technology too. I train people in it sometimes. So, just so you know, that's a thing that happens. What the heck? Great. Okay, so we're gonna take you back to here, and then we're gonna just deal with it, and it's gonna be great. And they're gonna see that people are in the Zoom room, and that's fine. And it's
Sweet.
gonna be fine. All right, so full screen.
It'll feel more like a full house, because we do have a full house tonight. It's pretty exciting.
Okay. And then, okay. And then I want to move you. Then I want you to be full screen. Okay, cool. Great. So we're just gonna go with good enough. Good enough works, right? Good enough works. You all can see, we all can see. All right. Thank you for, can you turn your sound off on your phone? Because that's weird. So the people who are online, just so you know, your chat is going to pop up at the bottom. So everyone in the room, so we actually can see a dialogue happening. It's a feature. It's not a technical difficulty at all. Hi, great. Thank you for coming. I'm so glad you are all here in real life and in the interwebs. Today, I am previewing a new resource that consolidates what we know about women in the metal type era. So that's roughly the late 1800s to the mid 1900s. As part of Letterform's online archive, this finding aid and research hub will ultimately include these women's biographies, typefaces, specimens, digital revivals, and links to online sources both inside and outside of Letterform's own collection. So here today, besides fighting with technology and showing you my desktop, I will be introducing metal type, covering what makes archival research so important, outline how this project came about, show you some of what we found in the archive already, and gesture to what the finding aid and future phases might look like. There are going to be type specimens and spreadsheets and non-Latinic characters. So there's something, I guess, for everyone. It's a full family experience. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, what exactly is metal type? I'm so glad you asked. First fact is that print has been around for centuries. China did woodblock printing in 200 CE, and Beisheng made ceramic movable type, which is here on the left, an example of that, in 1041. Korea had metal movable type in the 1200s. Although woodblock printing was more common, metal type was used for printing banknotes in China's Song, Jin, and Yuan dynasties. So that's the 10th to the 14th centuries. Yes, this is right. Movable type was around in Asia centuries before Europe. You may not have learned that because you probably know about this other person who made a press in the 1440s Germany named Johannes Gutenberg. He secretly invented his printing press with movable type. So it was his combo of press and type that was the big deal. We have no idea exactly how he made it, nor how he formed his letters. In fact, I have been told the only reason we have any dates at all about when he maybe made this press and this thing is because of some lawsuits he was involved in. So I don't want to tell too many tales out of school, but Gutenberg's type variations included these variants of a single letter, so it looked like scribes. So maybe he was trying to pass off his print as handwritten. I don't know. Little sus, that's all I'm saying. In any case, this method lasts for almost 500 years, really without much change. And yes, here on the left, or my right, left, right, what are directions? Here on the right, I know how to talk about directions too. Man, I'm good today. This is an 18th century engraving because the method seriously stayed the same for so long. And I had to have something from the 1700s here because it is my happy place. So, slide. Yes, thanks. So each letter in metal type is cast from a matrix and then is set by hand. So you can see here an example of that. You might know this also by its alias letterpress. And then comes the invention of line casting, which is a new method of hot metal typesetting. So Linotype and Monotype machines, which are both invented in the 1880s, these now create brand new letters that are automatically typeset by machines instead of reusing the same pieces of metal lettering over and over again. So it's brand new when you put it in and you type it in with these crazy keyboards and they're amazing to watch. So if you were here because you heard metal and you were thinking about death or speed or thrash metal, I'm sorry, this is not that talk, it's a different one. Grendel and I are gonna do a seminar, it's gonna be great. So just to sort of round out this history, after we have the hot metal type time, then in the 1950s to 80s-ish, phototype becomes a thing. And then in the 1980s, the digital era begins. So when we're talking about metal type, there are three key terms you need to know. A foundry is a company that makes a font. They used to actually have metal that they were pouring into things and founding it. That's why it's called a foundry. A font is a vessel for typeform design or the letter form design. So it's the thing that moves the design to the medium that you want it to show up on. This can be the set of metal sorts, like we just saw with the stick over all the metal pieces in the box. It can be made from wood, it can be on film, it can be a digital file. And then we have a typeface, which is the type design that you see on the page or screen that is the end product of the font. So a helpful analogy from Stephen Qualls is a font is to an MP3 what a typeface is to a song. You generally say you love the song, not so much the way it's delivered. So that said, today in our digital era, the terms font and typeface are basically used interchangeably. And so it was just know that it was not so in the before times. And I try to use typeface to be accurate, but I am also a product of my environment. So we all slipped up sometimes. Right. Now that we have some definitions out of the way, let's get to the juicy stuff. Like, why does archival recovery even matter? Small question. So generally, when we go back to the archives, wherever they might be, what we find changes conventional narratives and histories. For example, in literature, where I spend most of my time, the feminist archival recovery of the 1970s and 1980s revealed all kinds of work by women that had been ignored, forgotten, suppressed, or just fallen out of print. These findings changed the field and the canon, or what used to be considered great literature, so basically work by white, straight men. You just can't teach that anymore. You can't just teach a class of white, straight dudes. People can't say, oh, I guess there were no women writers before 1850 or whatever, because we know that they exist. And so you have to include women and people of color and queer voices in your literature classes, which is awesome. That's one impact of archival recovery. Recovery also can help us find people who have been erased or ignored. So folks like you or me, we didn't expect, who have not been seen. These voices deserve recognition and also can provide inspiration for future work. In terms of typography more specifically, design shapes how information is absorbed across media forms. I think we can all agree on that, hopefully. And if we can't, I have some people you can talk to. This metal type era, so the 1880s, 1950s, this vibe, this directly connects to today's typographic design choices, even when we're looking at screens. There's a continuity even when medium and methods change. And lastly, and I hope you're sitting down, and maybe this won't shock it, I hope this won't shock anybody, but women's work typically has been ignored or erased when it comes to tracing grand narratives of history. I know, I'm here to tell you. And given that good design, as we know, is invisible, women's contributions to design are often doubly hidden from the greater public. I've had to explain to a lot of people why type matters over the past 3 years. And I don't know if you saw on Twitter today, but Ice-T was like, I don't care about fonts. And it was hilarious. And so please go find that because it's amazing. Yes. So yeah. Let's see, topical humor. So the project. Okay. So this project started because I'd been volunteering for a while at Letterform Archive and mostly doing object descriptions and learning about 20th century graphic design. And I asked the fabulous Kate Long, right over there in the corner, what Letterform needed. And as many of you might know, since Letterform opened in 2015, it's been a site for all kinds of people learning about typography. And the biggest request is for the early type materials by women. The idea was to create something more than just a finding aid for Letterform point collection. So quick side note, if you haven't spent a lot of time in archives, finding aids are usually lists in libraries or archives that's an outline of what's there. So it's like 3 boxes of playbills, uncatalogued, or 4 linear feet of X's correspondence. And so it maps out what's there. So as a person coming in, you know what to ask for. So instead of that, we were thinking about an archival tool that synthesized as much information available about these women and their work as possible, as well as highlighted what's in Letterform Archive itself. So Kate had this vision and I was into it, but how to make it happen? I applied to the Mellon Public Scholar program, which is funded by the Mellon Foundation and UC Davis Humanities Institute. And that allowed the work to go, giving me funding to do 200 hours of work for Letterform Archive in the summer of 2021. So if you ever want to make an in-depth research hub, here's what you need: money, time, and research. That's it. So easy. And again, this research is building on what others have done before. And then you bring these all together and you make some spreadsheets and you do a lot of edits, and suddenly you have enough content for a finding aid. So this project is very much built on past work done by other researchers before me, such as Laura Weber's MA thesis here in the middle from 1997, and the Alphabet's blog post about first early female typeface designers. Everyone, it's very important. We also have a lot of the work that's been done in the past few years about women in metal type, from the Women in Type project that explored women's work for the Monotype and Linotype offices in the 20th century, to Yulia Popova's book, the pink one over there, that just came out in 2021 and gives an overview of this history as its introduction. I want to highlight two resources that really helped me out. One was slides from Tamara Segura and Carla Paston's TypeLab 2021 presentation, Hidden Types, and also the great research done by Lauren DeGain for her MA thesis. It's here, A Woman's Type, on the left. I found her research blog, which had sources and people I hadn't seen anywhere else. And so we connected. And then since my superpower is connecting people and places and things, I connected her with Letterform, and she gave an online talk last summer 2022, about her project and the 10 women type designers. Check it out. This is not a sponsored post. So what we found, I'm happy to talk about the nitty-gritty of the research process in the Q&A. So please write down or have those questions. But let's just dive into the findings, shall we? We shall. In total, I've pulled together information on 17 women designers. Some of these women we know a lot about, and you might recognize some of these names, and some of them barely anything. The arrows here to the left of the names indicate women who weren't included in previous English language resources, giving an overview of this particular slice of history. And yes, that is very specific because I have been trained not to make grand narratives or sweeping statements of fact. So yeah, here again, I need to highlight Lauren DeGain's work. Her inclusion of Russian type designer Galina Banakova led me to a whole bunch of other designers that I'm going to touch on more at the end. I only had so much time, so we decided to focus on these 11 women for building out the materials for the project's first phase. Before we get into what they made, I want to go on record that I am not a German speaker, and I'm very, very bad at phonetics. I will likely pronounce many names incorrectly here, despite the best efforts of multiple people who have helped me practice, and I'm sorry to them, and I'm sorry to you. But every entry starts with a title slide that has the typeface name and the designer's name, so you should be able to make it through together, right? So Anna Simmons. All right, so she didn't actually design any metal typefaces, JK. But she's hugely influential on everyone who is designing them in this time period. She is a well-documented figure. So just 3 highlights here. If you were, can we go to the .cam, please, Sarah? Thanks. Can you all see that? Okay.
Sorry about the lighting.
Yeah, the sun keeps moving. It's very frustrating. Also, this is really weird. So if you were designing type in Germany between 1907 and 1939, you probably took some of Anna Simon's classes in handwriting and hand lettering and writing. She translated Edward Johnson's Writing and Illuminating and Lettering in 1906 into German in 1910. And she also taught classes in Dusseldorf in his place, and then taught around England and Europe. So can we go back to the slide, Sarah? Sorry, this one is a little rough because I had a mess up in my script. So the other thing to know is that from May to October in 1914, She was in the Haus der Frau in the Bugra collection. I'm not even going to try and pronounce what Bugra stands for because you can see how long those German words are. So this was a international exhibition of book and trade and graphic design that was held in Leipzig, Germany. And the Haus der Frau, which is the House of Woman, which really should be like a techno band. I really want it to be. This is a really important place, so remember it. It's going to come up a lot. And there's a really great exhibition catalog that has a snapshot of women in design in 1914. So basically all of them. And we're going to go to the next book next because we're done with this now. Because sorry, I messed it up. Thank you. So you can find this exhibition catalog on archive.org. It even has a map. It's a who's who of women in design. And it is totally in German, which you may recall I do not speak. So that was the first exciting thing of, oh, there's a lot of German in this material. That's so fun. So now it's time to go to the first typeface, Belladonna. Again, we have the name, and then we have the designer, and then we have the date, and then we have the foundry. So yeah, it's bookmarked. Yeah. No, cool. You're doing me the favor by touching everything. It's great. I am not unhappy about that. So we're going to go through these examples by the typefaces release date from oldest to most recent, and then showing off examples I found in Letterform's collection. So Hildegard Hemming is one of the first, if not the first, women credited with designing a typeface. And sadly, we know very little about her, except that she also did hand lettering and had work exhibited at Bugra, again, that big exhibition. And that included examples of Belladonna's development process. Next, we have.
Sorry, technical things. I actually
Okay.
can't hide my screen because you have to hide it on your phone. So you can hide my
Yes, that is the only page from that book. It's beautiful. Thank you for holding it. I mean. Okay, cool. And then next book. And then the next slide. Yes, thank you. Caldwell, hand letter. And hand letter italics were made by Elizabeth Caldwell in 1916. She was also a printmaker, painter, and writer in Chicago. I'm waiting for the sharing. Yeah, I just, yeah, okay. Yeah, sharing. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
So are you seeing just the dot cam right now or not?
No, I see you and I see me and I see the dot cam.
Okay. Could you do a thing where you hide? So on Zoom, people are seeing just the dot cam. Can you do a thing where you hide non-video participants? If you click on me and go right, just click on me.
Thank you. I'm clicking on you. Cool.
Right click on click on the three dots.
Yep, I got rid of you and now I'm gonna go get rid of me. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, you can hide yourself.
I mean, look, I don't want to put my light under, but like I will hide myself. Okay, wait. Where'd it go? Is it that one?
There's one that says hide self view.
Yeah, there is one that says hide self view, but it is in that one. Yes. Ha! We have conquered the excitement and I have let my control completely go because I am not controlling the slides nor the dot cam nor the Zoom. Great. Thank you, Sarah. This is so much better for everyone who's here in the building. Thank you so much. Thank you all. This is technology, makes our life easier. So Elizabeth Caldwell, she had a different technology set in 1916. That's my transition back to what we're looking at. She was based in Chicago. She is, you might be shocked to know, an American in a sea of non-Americans who were early type designers. In 1948, the American Institute of Graphic Arts had an exhibit imaginally titled American Type Designers and Their Typefaces on exhibit. Caldwell was the sole woman out of the 47 typographers included in this exhibition. In fact, she was described in a accompanying catalog as, quote, the only American woman type designer known. Caldwell also wrote a series of articles about hand lettering for Sketchbook in 1904 and did lots of advertising work in the Chicago area. Next, we have STAM, which is Francisca Roch, who made multiple Hebrew typefaces, including STAM, which is based on her incredible hand lettering. Yes, beautiful. So this is the specimen for STAM. You might notice that we have now gotten to the second language that I do not speak and a whole new alphabet, and we are only a few people in. So working through this material directly really stretched Google Translate's capabilities because it gets real confused when it has fonts it doesn't recognize. But luckily, the lovely Paola had a direct source who helped me parse out what was a type specimen and what was a newspaper style guide, for example. I think also that Bartsch created Hebrew typefaces called Stocken and Mayer, but things got a little murky trying to parse out what was what. Bartsch's graphic design work is extensive and varied, and it includes creating the design for the Israeli passport, which was used until 1980, not 18, but 80. And then, yeah, and so this is another thing that is not actually type. It is a sample of hand cut type that she made based on her hand lettering, and it's just really beautiful. So we're just going to show you a little bit of it because it's gorgeous. There you go. See, because you, I bet, can read Hebrew, so you know what it's talking about. That's so lovely. I'm really excited to get more people into this mix so that we can do a lot of amazing work together. But yeah, her stuff is just beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. Cool. Okay. So Maria Ballet is another German graphic designer, illustrator, and commercial artist. And she worked at the Bauer Type Foundry in the 1920s, where she created an initial set that is coming, like all good things.
Want to start with this one?
Sure.
Or let's start with this.
Okay. Badoo. So she created this initial set to complement. Yeah, that's where the marker is. There we go. Yeah. Perfect. Bernhard script. So for the sticklers out there, yes, technically these initials are not a cast foundry type, but they are electrotypes, but they're made of metal, so I counted them. They only came in a few large sizes, and there have been actually multiple digital revivals if you want to add some flourish to your own design with some curlicue drop caps. I found an article in International Advertising Art that credits Ballet as the designer of the German language type specimen for Beton, another typeface. So this points to yet more work that is likely out there made by women designers that we don't know about. Often type specimens don't have any indication who designed them. So there's more possibilities out there. Great. We do, however, know a lot about Elizabeth Freelander. There are literally entire books and films about her life. Her typeface, Elizabeth Roman and Elizabeth Italic, were made as a commission for Bauer in 1927, but they were not released until 1935. Even though the typical practice in Germany was to name typefaces with the designer's last name, Freelander's distinctly Jewish one wasn't a good choice under the Nazi regime that had recently come to power. So they called it Elizabeth and spelled the Z or an S depending on where it is being sold. By the time Elizabeth was released as a typeface,
Freelander was no longer living in Germany because of its anti-Semitic laws had forced her to move away. Later, she worked for England's Black Propaganda Unit, forging Nazi documents. And she also did design work for more clients than I can mention here, including Penguin and Mills and Boon. But just look at this really cool town topics. This is one of my favorite things that we found. This pamphlet for Bauer. That's so long and so cool. It doesn't even fit on the camera because it's so big. And every typeface has a little picture and a little story, and then it's the typeface. It's just so cool. I really wanted to show this to you all, even though it's giant and hard to manipulate. Isla Schula's Rhapsody was released by Ludwig Meyer in 1951. So we are jumping a little forward in time. And it includes some swash capitals and ornaments. As you can see, it is very decorative. So here's Rhapsody. So cool. Yeah, get into it. Yeah, it's colored. It's so rad. Yeah, the sun keeps moving. So throughout her long career in letterform, Schula did type design, punch cutting, hand lettering, graphic design, and especially book covers. Rhapsody clearly connects to her hand lettering work and Baskerville scripts. It was a popular typeface in Germany when it was released. Rhapsody also makes what I think are some of the coolest specimens in the collection so far, because they just are like so rad. But you know, taste. All right. Gudrun Zaff von Hesse is yet another type designer who has a deep body of work. If you've not heard of her, you might know of some of her husband Hermann Zaff's work, such as the typefaces Optima, Palantino, Zaff Dingbats, or Zaffino. Zaff von Hesse's, however, type design career, which is super easy to say, it spans almost 70 years. So besides the metal type here, which again is a set of 4 typefaces that go together, she also later designed phototype and digital type. These 3 typefaces are from the 1950s, and again, they hang out together in specimen books. So there is honestly so much information available about Zaff von Hesse's body of work. It's really hard to sum up in just a few lines. But perhaps my favorite fact is that Hesse Antiqua, which is the first alphabet she designed, it's a set of all capitals where she cut the punches herself to use for book covers. We don't have it, sadly. This was made into a digital version released in 2018, just in time for 100th birthday. So she got a digital font for her 100th birthday. Anna Maria's Schindbach, Schildbach, yeah, rolls off the tongue. Thank you. See, as I said, this is why I give a content warning. Her titling typeface Montan is very much a fan favorite, although we know very little about her life. So we do know. No, we're on to the yes, it is in this one. Yeah. I thought we did. Oh,
I'm gonna look for it.
okay. We're gonna find Montan. It's gonna be really exciting.
Just gonna look through the book.
Yeah. That's its temple. Oh, yeah, it is. That's great. Yeah.
For the record, we don't hate just looking through these things.
I know you don't hate just looking through these things. So this is like ASMR, but for typography, right? Is that a thing yet? I noticed the radio silence. Okay. Oh, good. Okay, thanks, online audience. I don't know. I don't know where she is. If it's not there. There it is, Montana, there it is. Oh, yeah, yes. Hooray, all right, so. So Scheidlock worked for Stemple in the 1950s, and she designed, big reveal, yeah, ooh, this all capitals typeface, and it works well with both serif and sans serif options. A Stemple report from this period, again, numbers, lists 48 designers with Scheidlock and Zeph von Hesse as the only women type designers listed. So Stemple had 2 women designing type for them in the 50s. She later worked as a teacher. Those sources don't really give us details, and we don't even know when she died. So if you know more, this is a great opportunity to add to the archive. Please let us know. And then, yeah. Ooh, okay. Next, we have Friedel Thomas's 2 typefaces, which were released posthumously in 1958. But she had a very long and prolific career. And Thomas showed me that sometimes you should read the comics in a blog post. Sometimes the comments are okay, not often, but sometimes. Florian Hardwig added her to the Alphabet's first female type designer post that we looked at earlier. And then Lauren DeGain responded to that. And then once again, we see this awesome research community in action. So there's like a circle of life happening. The Thomas ones, yeah.
So sorry.
That's fine, you're cool. We got it. Yeah. So this is for, yeah, there we go. And it's actually these first ones. It's like the very beginning of the whole. Oh, yeah. So Thomas Schrift, and then you can, it has the owl and stuff. So also a very cool specimen. So in fact, speaking of circles, Thomas was a student in one of Anna Simon's first lettering courses back in 1917. So see, full circle happens, keeps happening. She was also a bookbinder, printer, and teacher who taught lettering and graphic design at multiple German schools from the 1920s to 1950s when she died. And this is one of our favorites when we were looking through, because the bear is really good. And the pig, yeah, these woodcuts, and like, it's just very cool. So, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So now that we've looked at a lot of beautiful things, just so fun. What is next? Da, da, da. Okay. Sorry. Oh, all right. Great. So ultimately, this research hub will have a landing page for each designer, which hopefully will be live by the end of 2023. But you know how projects work. So here's a template I made to initially organize everything, just to give you a taste. The pages will have a quick biography, list things the designer made, typefaces, other design objects, the writing they did, have digital revivals, and then link to what Letterform has in its collection, both primary and secondary sources, along with general resources that mention that this person. But right now, there's a taster in the online archive with a table that includes all of the currently digitized works in Letterform's collection, many of which we've seen today. So if you've not come to Letterform in person, when you come to do research visits, they set a table of materials for you to look through. And so this online table feature replicates the way that groups of objects and materials can be put together in a digital space. And now you can even share them. That just got rolled out, I think, earlier this month, right? Again, unsponsored post. So you can make tables and share them with other people, and it's very cool. In the future, there will hopefully also be some sort of general resource aggregator of all these blog posts, web pages, books, etc. Hopefully giving any curious researcher the ability to dive in more deeply on their own. It turns out that there are a lot of women in design, if only you bother to look for them. For the future phases of this resource, I hope there are pages on some of the other women I came across in the work, but could not pull together a comprehensive page for due to time and language constraints. Galina Balankova, for example, is a huge figure in Russian language typography, but there's very little about her in English language resources. She created multiple Cyrillic typefaces for the Soviet Union's Polygraph Type Design Bureau from the 1940s to 1970s, and maybe wrote some books about design that I, along with the amazing help of my friend Alexa, who did generously some Russian searching and translation for me, because she is great. But even with the efforts of us two, we have not been able to find titles of any of these. In fact, there appear to have been many women working for the then USSR's only type foundry. And why only one type foundry? Well, centralized power is centralized. So you just need one, you don't need more. But again, most of this information is in Russian. I don't speak Russian, getting us to the third language I don't speak in this project. I speak French and Serbian, but they didn't do type design apparently. So there also I also came across these two women in Germany who did lettering work at Das Haus der Frau back in the 1914 Bugra exhibition, Marguerite Bosch and Charlotte Anger. And they advertised their services. They have this ad down here in the corner. So there's this, it's in the bottom right corner of that square. So services included type design. And I emailed with type history expert Dan Reynolds about what I'd found. And he guessed that maybe they'd only work with brass type, which I have also learned, although a metal is totally different than what we've been talking about here. So I found traces of their agency and individual work in a bunch of publications from 1914 to 1938, but nothing about any mass-produced typefaces yet. Before I wrap up, I just want to express appreciation for all of those who have been working to preserve this too easily forgotten history, from the nameless archivists who put things in files to the writers of recent books whose work we can recognize. But especially big thanks to these folks who helped me out in 2021 when I was digging into a whole field I knew very little about. Y'all are really awesome. That said, I am so excited to see where this project goes. And if you have any leads on these or other women designing type in this period, especially of non-Latin typefaces, please let us know. Maybe we should set up a tip line or something. So I think it's now time for Q&A. So thank you so much. Yay. Okay, so I'm going to get myself off of this screen because that's weird. Hi, it's like we're just doing weird stuff right now, people. It's weird. Yeah, I'm just gonna make it go away. Carry on. I'm just gonna make this go away in my own time, apparently, somehow. No, this is so weird. Stop it. Okay. Whew. Okay, there we go.
Well, in the meantime, if anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand or call them out. Whatever.
Guess we don't have
Folks on Zoom, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat or put them in the portion.
Cool.
Yeah. And then we're just gonna get into it.
Cool.
Let's see. Questions that.
Uh,
I think Sarah is gonna do the.
is Sarah gonna do because the Q&A?
Yes.
Okay.
Does anyone want to get us started from the audience? Yeah.
All right, you go ahead.
It's great. I'm into it.
Super great work. We're really excited for the archive.
Yay.
And I beginning about really design, and one of those areas with visibility is the drawing out where some other typefaces were made that are credited to male designers, but then women were doing a lot of the extensions of those typefaces, whether it's new sizes or styles, or just finishing out the character set. And I wonder if you've had any conversations with Fiona Ross and Alice Dubois, who have been studying those kinds of drawing offices, like at Linotype.
So the question for Zoom, because, you know, sound carries weirdly, is what about women who were working, doing work that wasn't credited, drawing, for example, typefaces. And there's this project that, so Alice Savoy and Evelyn Waugh are doing, about, and Ross, right? Who are doing about the women working in the monotype and linotype offices. And so I did contact them, and they were in a different phase of their project. They have now the Women in Type website. If you look for like Women in Type, it comes up. They have published their findings here recently, and they have a lot of articles and really beautiful stuff. And I think it's great. And I bet there are more things out there. I know that Letterform has a bunch of linotype, totally linotype. I totally knew that 100%. There are a bunch of the drawings. And for those of you who aren't type nerds, basically when you made type, you had to have drawings of how the characters looked at different sizes, but you made them really big, even though the characters are going to be really small because science. And yeah, so, and they're initial, then we see that like a lot of women did work in that way. So that's another area of very cool stuff.
Thank you. We have a question from the audience, and they are asking, Jen Farrell is asking, will women currently designing and casting type also be included in this project?
That's a great question about women making casting type down. I have no idea. I don't know if there are any people who are just designing casting type these days. Hey, audience of people who work in type design, is that a thing that people do?
Very few, but it's still happening.
A couple? We're getting a couple. So if if you know people who do that, that's rad. If you just do cast type design, please let us know. I think the idea is to build out the historical record and then see where it goes. So, Grendel.
This is reminding me of a conversation I had recently about a couple of women cutters,
Mhm.
which, have you looked into that at all? We're talking about Nelly Gad and
Nope.
Mosted, who are two French women punch cutters, perhaps only women punch cutters that have ever existed. That we know.
Well, yeah, I mean, Zaf von Hesse and Scheilbach also were punch cutters. So that makes 4. There we go. No, because I only had 200 hours. And I had I had a dissertation also to finish too. So yeah, but yeah, for the Zoom audience, question about women punch cutters as well. There are 2 French women that we know of. Yeah, there are a lot of women who are working in design out there, and that would be great. And if someone wants to take that up, I think that would be awesome. And I actually speak French, so I'd be really into finding that material because I could translate it on my own, which would be so rad. Next question.
I actually have a question.
Go for it.
Well, I wanted to start just by saying I'm really glad that about how you talked about how all of your research wasn't really like a single story, like it really it took contributions from so many different people. There were a lot of moving parts to it, which just kind of got me thinking also about expanding the research and looking at gaps and areas that still need to be filled in, just because this is such a vast topic and there's so much within it and there's so much to dig into. So I guess I'm just wondering about where do you think the gaps in this research lie, and what are kind of the priorities in your opinion, or areas that can be filled in using the voices of other people and the perspectives of other people?
It's a really great question. Can you all hear that on the Zoom okay? They're right next to me, so.
Yeah, that one came through. Thanks.
Cool. All right. So yeah, archival gaps are a real problem, but also a real area for opportunity. I think that non-Western language scripts are really like, I have no idea. And I don't speak any languages in Southeast Asia. Like, we know that there's a history there. And that would be great. I'm sure that there's stuff there to find. And I think that for me, I mean, one of the things that's really cool about doing research in this moment is all this stuff has been digitized. And something that's really cool about working the materials that were printed in the 20th century is that OCR works on them. So you can word search things, because you know what doesn't work with OCR? Things that were printed in the 1700s. That's what I work on. So it's like candy. I'm like, ooh, I can like look for these names and they show up across these things. And so the international, there's the database whose name I wrote down, so I would remember it because I never can remember it. The International Advertising and Design Database has a lot of trade catalogs and other materials like that that have been digitized. So that's a place to look for things. I mean, one thing, just for like an example of spots, Friedel Thomas is described as they use masculine pronouns for her in some work published about her. Because her name kind of looks like a dude's name, I guess. And so like, even there's stuff on record that could be, you know, changed or whatever. So the idea, I think, here, or if I had, you know, unlimited time, money, and technical ability, I really would love this to be a thing where we consolidate as much as what we have, and then as people find more stuff, it gets added and grows and becomes a place. Because I think there aren't just archival gaps, but there are also like, oh, well, this blog post links to this thing, but that thing's dead because that site was taken down 5 years ago. But archive.org maybe screen capped it before it got taken down, but it did screen cap it right? So there's like, sort of, how do you put all those things together in a place? But yeah.
Speaking to that a little bit more, I know at the beginning of your talk, you did say that, like, I know you said that getting into the actual process of what the research looked like would be like a really, like, it would take up some time, it'd be pretty fast. I would love if you could share a little bit more about the process, about these different collaborations.
Sure.
All the people that like kind of helped you, and how the trains of thoughts kind of moved through the process of your research.
There were so many trains. It was like a station. So the project I did, when I came to Letterform, the first thing I did was I listed all the bound type specimens that were in their collection, because that was something else they needed done. And Kate apparently will love me forever because of it. So, and Stu, yeah, and it's accurate. Apparently that's also a thing that I'm good at. If you need someone to list things accurately, hi. So there were 680 bound type specimens in there, and that was actually super useful because I learned to recognize words that meant like unlimited or like company in like Italian and German and languages I don't speak, and sort of get a vibe for how these things work. Bound type specimens are basically a foundry would publish a catalog that would have like, here are all the typefaces we make. And then you can flip through them and see them, because if you're going to order like tons of metal that are made into certain letter forms, you want to make sure you like how they look. So you see what they look like beforehand. So process wise, because Yulia Popova's book had just come out like months before, I used that as the most recent resource. And I went and broke out all that information into line by line in a Google sheet. And then I tracked down the sources she cited, and then I went and dug out more materials about the women that I could find, because hers was like an introduction. And you know, it's a historical preface. It's not like a 200-page research work about these women. And then she does interviews with current type designers. So it's like a very cool bridging. So I went and looked in digital resources like HathiTrust and archive.org, the International Advertising and Design Database. And so I found more materials that I hadn't seen cited elsewhere. And then I made a specimen list, and then I went back and looked at all those things that I had just talked about, and then flipped through the type bins and stuff, trying to find the things which we have on this cart right here, to make sure that we had stuff. And then also flagged things for the archive to look for as well. So how can they expand their collection? And then the collections team and I worked to make this finding aid template. And then I wrote up the pages, and now they are in the process of being QC'd and edited, and magic is happening that I don't really know exactly, but it's there. It's going to be great. That's what I know. But yeah, it was a lot of like, oh, this is mentioned in these 5 websites. Let me make sure I have all those links correct so that we can find them again. I also made a type tech timeline, which alliterates quite nicely, because I couldn't find one that gave me a history of type from clay tablets to 2000 something. And so we wrote that up because I was like, I don't understand this. I'm sure I'm not the only one. And so we have that, which hopefully is going to become a resource.
Yeah, publish it on our site.
Is it published?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's going to be published. It's going to be very cool. So things like, here's when Monotype showed up, and here's when Gutenberg made that press, and here's when, I think, I think something that's very interesting about doing archive history is a lot of people get really concerned about who the first of something was, and then they argue about it. Is this the first printed book? Is this the first sold? And like, okay, fine. Yeah, sure. It is important, but also like, it's an early one. Great. Are there other early ones? Like, let's go find more of them. So yeah. Okay. That was a lot of talking. Questions? Question.
Did you uncover anything while either here at the archive or in your research that was like new, exciting, previously undiscovered? Like, did you find anything in our stats that we didn't know about already? Bring to light something revelatory.
No. Question was, did I find anything revelatory in the stacks that I brought to light here? That answer is no, Gribble. I'm sorry. I did not do that.
Were there any like strange or bizarre like experiences that you had when you were doing your research process?
I mean, when I tried to like search for things in Russian in Russia, like to find, yeah, that was exciting and weird. Okay. What did I find, friends? Tell me what I found.
I'm sure you have things that we didn't know about, but the main thing is that building a finding aid is basically bringing to light the things that are buried in the archive that we wouldn't have known where to find them otherwise. So we knew were there, maybe, but having it all in one place is basically like bringing it to light, because otherwise everybody else has to go digging.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Thanks. So for the online fans, Stu is very nicely saying, which I think he's right, is pulling things together is, we knew they were there somewhere, but we didn't know exactly where we are. And now we can touch them all. They're on this cart right here. And that was pretty cool.
To add to that, I would say,
Yeah. Whoa. I feel like I'm on display. Oh, look at this lighting. This is great. I love it.
that I would say this is the first time that anyone could know all of those things. The issue with having a collection that is largely uncataloged or was largely uncataloged is that certain people knew certain things that were in the archive.
Mhm.
So as a full team, we probably knew these materials, but if you had asked any one person on the collections team, they would have only been able to sort the fractions of and so you did this.
It's true. And I did have a lot of like, hey, do you know if we have anything by X person? And they would be like, oh, go talk to this person. They know about that stuff. And then it would be like, oh, Anna Simons. Yeah. And it would be like, here's a stack of stuff about Anna Simons. And I'd be like, great. Apparently she's very well known. That's going to be easy. Like, cool. So I think one thing I noticed, which kind of makes sense when you think about it, is that women who died more recently have very big archives because they kept them and donated them and did things with them. And people who died in the wars or in the 50s, that is a little less well documented. And so it's just wild to me. I work on people and things from 300 years ago, and we know more about some of that than we know about some people who did design in the 1950s. And that's bananas. But I don't know. Other questions?
Yeah, speaking from a professional perspective, I graduated from art school like just a couple of years ago, and when I took I took like these required classes, you know, about design history and all of this, like all the stuff I feel that you touched on today or talked about was like none of that was like, or that was like kind of barely touched on. It was probably like a semester long class, and there was like one tiny section of it on women, like let alone like brown women or like queer women, like there was none of that, you know? So I guess like you're an educator, so from like a pedagogical sense, how do you think that this research and this information can get incorporated into this into like the canon of what this kind of education looks like, especially when the research itself is still so new and when it's still happening? How can this just be a part of what students are learning about?
That's a great question. So I think that, again, I have never taught type design. I'm not a type designer. I do not teach design classes. I teach literature classes and college writing, which have things in common. But I think one thing about canons is that they destroy stuff. And I mean, but like, honestly, like canons have use because you have common reference points, but they also get a little monolithic. And so I know in literature, there's still a debate happening about, well, this is the bonus stuff. I mean, I took a theory class and we had like brown person day that also was queer person day. Like all that theory was in one day, but we like spent weeks on Aristotle and shit. And I was like, excuse me, like these are, we could, okay. These people are still alive. Maybe we could spend some more time on, no. All right. So I was not teaching that class. But I think, you know, the more we put information out there, I think that there is sort of this push of recovery and people who are coming up and learning who want to be like, where are the people? Like, where are they? Tell me about this stuff. Don't tell me it doesn't exist. So you know, hopefully having a place where people can get this information pretty freely, in a way that is also highly cited, because that's something that I'm really, really committed to is citation. I really like to cite my sources a lot, maybe too much sometimes, but I think it's really important that you can find the stuff, because there are too many people, Foucault, who just, you know, mention this thing like it's this fact, and you're like, but where did you find that fact? I don't know. So I think it has to come, I mean, it has to come from the teachers, and the textbook people need to understand that they need to be doing better. And I don't know who's making those textbooks, but you know, hopefully the more we get out there.
Too bad we don't know anybody who's writing any books on history of life.
Yeah, it's a real bummer that no one here is writing anything about type history. This is sarcasm, deeply sarcastic, just for everyone to know. So yes. Other questions from the folks here or on the onlines?
We've got one
I think they're
from
fun.
Zoom.
Is there anything
I'm just thinking of the thing that Silas Monroe says about the canon, which
Okay.
is that just because, you know, you want to talk about other voices, doesn't mean the canon has to go be flat.
Yeah.
It just means that some of the figures in the canon need to shrink a little bit to make room for the voices that have been silenced or excluded.
I mean, there's room for everybody, like, yeah.
Some people who work in brass.
Yeah, tell me about brass, oh muse.
Why brass is like being a metal is not.
I have no freaking clue why brass type. I was like, oh, brass type. Brass is a metal. This is metal. It's metal, right? And it's like, sort of like speed versus thrash. They're not the same, but they're both metal. The type here is, it's an alloy that's been made and it's commercially made, and I think brass type is usually hand cut. Please help me, because
I
I'm,
think one of the reasons for that is that there's a kind of a prejudice against non-printing type. So often brass type would be used for book binding, binding. So you would use it to press in, maybe in bond, title and spine or binding, for instance, and they try to separate these things out sometimes. It's still just practice type.
so for the folks at home, brass type has a bad reputation because, oh man, I almost made you do a spit take. I'm really sorry. Because it was used for such terrible things as hand bookbinding. What is that? But it's hand lettered instead of mechanically done. So, I mean, this is where like Zeph von Hesse's, she punch cut her type that she made, and like apparently that was a big deal. She like went down on the punch cutters and were like, show me your ways, and they were like, okay, and then they did, because she was making it for an anniversary book, and so it's blind stamped a lot. And there's a really beautiful blog post with one of the co-designers for the digital version that talks about like, and it has pictures of her like work tools, because she had them so that she could swap them out for her hand tooling. So I mean, whatever. When I worked in a book bindery, we did metal type that, yeah, I did do that. I'm gonna just slip that in there. When I worked at a book bindery, so we had hot metal type because we put it in a thing and then you put it on gold and you were stamping in, because we bound a lot of dissertations and theses, which is different than letterpress, which a lot of people who did letterpress let me know was not the same. So, but yeah, brass type, like, it's a whole, I think one of the problems, but not problem, one of the features of doing research is you have to make limits, because otherwise it's like, but what about? So one of the limits for this project was like, I'm doing women who design metal type. That is what I'm doing. And people were like, but what about phototype? And I was like, I don't know. That's great. I think it's cool. We're going to write a book about it, apparently, after this current one is done. Like some people did have careers that spanned that, but like you have to put bounds around the room, because otherwise it just becomes too thing. I know it'll shock you to know that this is something that also happens in my other research practices, where I'm like, but I want to talk about all the stuff, and people are like, maybe we should talk about some of the stuff concentratedly. So we have another question in the chat. Has anyone investigated the role of women in developing true type Unicode and the consequences thereof? I'm sure someone has done that, but I have no idea who it is. Sure, probably. Yeah.
Do we know anything about how these were acquired from? Were there any new things that were acquired while you were doing your research?
Have we acquired anything new, friends, from my wish lists?
It's just, wow, I have to read this.
I know that there was one thing we found that had already been auctioned was a set of book plates that had been made. And so again, this is where digital traces are really great, because we can find pictures of them. And so we can see what they looked like, even though someone bought them and we have no idea who did. But there are lists I flagged things. I learned about a book place that you can buy strange books that have type involved that had a name that was clever. Yeah, expertise, limits of.
Were there any good like reference books that you would recommend that you used that you didn't speak about during your talk?
Sure. The big white one with the black letters on it, that's called something like Women in Graphic Design 1880 to 2012, I think she said, is really wonderful in that it has this, it's a compendium. So it has a lot of short entries, but it has a lot of coverage. And there are a couple of websites that have a lot of font history or samples or things in them. But I think sort of mirroring what is in the archive here itself, everything's sort of scattershot. So there are a few websites that are hosted by individuals that are pretty comprehensive, but it's their own thing. And so, yeah, Kate, question.
I know that you did a lot of text-based research, but I know that your research also took you into conversation with other people. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the role of collaborative research a little bit in this project, or maybe that connection with people in other places.
Yeah, so the question for the folks at home is, I did a lot of text-based research, but thinking about the collaborative research that happened, and it was great. I mean, this is the thing, it takes a village, right? Like, when I will say that Stephen Qualls is a wonderful person to have in an office when you're doing research about type, because you can go over and be like, hey, Stu, have you ever heard about this thing? And he will be like, no, I haven't, or yes, and here's a whole paragraph about how it works. And you'll be like, awesome, thank you. I will try to remember that and write it down. So like corresponding with Dan Reynolds, who's in Germany, was really wonderful. And like, just really generous, like, here's what we have. His blog also has been like, he's been updating it, and there's some more stuff on it than there was then. Lauren DeGain also like shared her thesis with me before it was like out in the world. And that was really cool. Some other people were like, this is great, but we're working on other things right now, maybe later. So yeah, I mean, to me, like as a researcher, like collaboration is really important to me. And I think it's really important to like recognize that people took time to translate stuff for me or help me like identify what the hell this thing was. I'm like, I don't know what this is. What is it? Like, it feels important. Is it important? Like, oh, it's a style guide. Okay, that's important, but not quite the same thing as what I was before. So yeah, and I would love, I mean, my hope is that when this has become more of a thing, yes, thanks to yes, typeoff.de is Dan Reynolds' website. Having people being able to contribute and have those contributions recognized, I think would be really cool. So yeah, it's pretty neat.
Word. I know we only have about 5 more minutes left in case anyone has like 1 or maybe 2 like final closing questions, or if there's anything we can go back to from the card if people want to look at under the camera.
Yeah.
Or not.
No, you have to count. You have to count to 10. That's the secret.
I guess I do have another.
Sure. See, because you're the one who's going to break. That's fine. Yeah, let's go on. This is a teaching trick.
We've talked a lot about research in different forms. I guess the thing that I'm curious about is like, how can this research be put into practice by designers that are like working now, especially like women designers who may be taking inspiration from this. So I guess like, I don't know, like, I'm just thinking that like, well, I know you talked a little bit about like typeface revival, like some of the typefaces in here, but like, what, like, do you, or like, is there anything that like you were particularly inclined to, like outside of just like kind of maybe reading about and like cataloging all these works of exist? Like, what are some ways to maybe expand the legacy of these artists and these designers that exist?
I would love to hear ideas about how to expand this legacy. Hey, there's an idea.
For any question?
Sure.
Bill, who owns the fonts that we talked about today, and could one use them commercially?
It depends is the answer. Some of them have been revivaled. That's the technical term for it. And you can buy them on fonts.com or other things, and others have not. And I don't know. I do know that people like, this is one of the things, Lauren DeGain's work is really cool because she actually went and found like cast type. And then she did a whole letterpress like component of her research. And so she like found like old pieces of type and then did stuff with them. And I know that's a whole like vibe that people get into. It's the technical term also, vibes. I have all the terms, all of them. They're all mine. So, but like Stemple and like I mean, my guess would be that it's the foundries who made them, and a lot of those foundries still exist, and I'm sure they really care about copyright, because people seem to care about that sometimes when money's involved, especially. So I think one thing, just to go back to your original, is like putting into practice. I know that Type West does, a lot of students have done that. And speaking of collaboration, there was a student who contacted me and was like, oh, I'm looking at this. And I was like, you could make Montan. People would love that. I mean, it's funny. Like some of them have like 4 revivals and then some of them have 0 revivals. And so it's also where things go. And I mean, I love talking to people about what they're into. So, and learning about it. I mean, that's the thing that's been really cool, is like, this is not my area of expertise. Like I learned all of this in 2021. And then I went and finished a dissertation about something totally different, and then slept it for a few days. And then, you know, have been doing other stuff. So it's been, I think for designers, you know, just, it seems from is, if you know that something's there, then you can go look at it, right? And then you can think, oh, maybe there's more stuff there, or like whatever. And one thing that's really awesome is, you know, women's role in digital type design is like very well established and like very, very present. And that's awesome. And so if we can bring that energy, like looking more backwards. I don't know. I don't know the trends in type, but I do know that people are like, oh, you study old stuff, so Shakespeare. And I'm like, no, not Shakespeare. And they're like, so the Victorians. I'm like, so there was a time period between Shakespeare and the Victorians, about 150 years. We call it the 18th century. Something's happened there. Like, you know, I think sometimes we get very presentist and we forget that things happened in the before times that maybe are very similar to the now times. So that's, but yeah, and it looks like there are lots of resources that are being put in the chat. So yeah,
All right,
cool.
thank you so much.
I think that's
Thank you
time.
guys for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, so much. And if people who are here, we can show you things if you
Yeah.
want to see it.
Yeah, if you want to come and look at anything afterwards, maybe more stable bag.
Yeah, we can do that. Sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, people on Zoom.
Thank
Yay.
you, Bethany. I'm gonna close it out. This was amazing. Appreciate you. Someone says sign to my Zoom program.